Hey guys and girls, it's your boy Mark. Long time no see. I'm really excited to be back here. I've missed you guys and I've returned with a purpose. Today I'm here because I feel like I need to respond to what is a growing trend and honestly a friggin' phenomenon on YouTube within the metal community, and that is Tiermaker. You guys know what I'm talking about. Both fans and musicians alike are very passionately rating the greatest heavy metal bands of all time according to their personal perspectives, and I feel like these videos are wonderful. I've watched far too many of them. I love them all. But the biggest crime that's being committed in each of these videos are the lists that they are reviewing. These lists are so narrow that they're leaving out most of heavy metal's most influential bands, and they're not even taking into consideration and leaving out all of the subgenres that make heavy metal in favor of everything that's mainstream. So with that in mind, I went on a mission to find the ultimate list of heavy metal bands on Tiermaker that included all the giants that were forgotten about and included every subgenre of metal, and I found exactly what I was looking for. There's only one problem. This list is hella long, and there is honestly no way I can cover all these bands within one video or even in 1 hour. So we're going to have to do this in multiple parts. So let's quit talking and get to the list. Alright, so this brings us to our next part, and that is scoring. The scoring system used in today's video is going to be completely different than anything you've seen yet. And that's because this is not going to be an opinion-based tier ranking. This is going to be as factually accurate as I can get it for you. Bands will be judged and eventually placed based on their cultural significance, the value of the impact their contributions have made to metal, availability and accessibility of their music. This is how bands influence other people. And then legacy. Each of these are key ingredients to the most successful bands in metal. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the tiers that we have in front of us today. Obviously, S tier is as high as this list goes, and that is reserved for the true legends of heavy metal. They either created the genre or pioneered metal in a way that no one else has before and set the path for a lot of other bands to follow. They changed the face of music forever. Now, the one thing that I do want to point out is a lot of the bands that are going to be in the S tier are not popular or mainstream. So a lot of your mainstream bands are probably not going to end up in the S tier. There's a difference between being popular and then culturally significant. A lot of metal's most vital bands, most essential bands were never mainstream. A lot of them, released maybe only 1 or 2 albums and then disappeared for whatever reason, but the legacy and the impact of their music that they left behind continues to influence people to this day, and people continue discovering this band for one reason or the next. A tier are more of your popular or mainstream bands. These are the guys that took metal in a great direction, improved upon an existing genre, influenced a lot of people, but they did not contribute to music in the same way that the S tier did. Now there's some that have potential to go to an S in maybe 10 to 15 years, but right now they took what was already there and made it accessible. B tier is reserved for more of your rising stars. These are young bands that have been around for a little while, that are starting to influence people. They're becoming very important, but they have not been around long enough to establish enough legacy and following to get to A tier, but these are the ones to watch. These are the guys that you keep seeing coming up. And also, B tier is more for your older bands as well that were once relevant, but are no longer as accessible as they once were, but are still extremely popular. Now, the C and the D tier categories are more for your unsung heroes. These guys have contributed to music in a unique way, but they never received the support and didn't have the accessibility to reach as many people as others. This is also reserved for bands that were once extremely relevant and popular, but as the years go on, their legacy did not maintain. The biggest difference between a C and a D tier is all dependent upon accessibility and legacy. The less available your music is, the more niche you are, the less likely you're going to have the following and the dues that you're given. Also, C and D is for some of the older bands that are losing relevance and no one is seeming to care about, which means they're losing legacy. F tier. I don't want you guys to think that anybody that falls into the F tier just absolutely sucks balls, but F really stands for flew under the radar. There's a lot of really great metal bands that never really got any support, that stayed underground and never really left. Their contributions to music were minimal just because they never received the kind of attention they deserve. Not many people know of them, so they're not very culturally significant. And because this list is so big, I put a column that says no context. While whoever created this list went into great detail to include all the essential players, they also included every single niche and obscure band, and I cannot judge a band if I don't really know them. I do not want to talk down anyone's legacy. They could be, they could be very relevant and I just not know about it. So this is where I'm going to rely on you guys the most. Please let me know if you have any sort of information or accessibility that I could use to appropriately judge these bands, and I will fix them accordingly in a later video. And of course, as it is with every last one of these Tiermaker videos, there are always bands that are not metal and do not belong because of blurred lines. It's happened really in every decade. Nobody really knows what's metal and what's not. There's a lot of blurred lines. I am here today to help correct some of that. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into this. Alright, so we are starting off today with a band that's actually very important to the extreme and brutal subcategories of heavy metal. I want to say they were very influential to the grindcore, brutal, and slam metal. I do apologize for my inexperience with the cores and the brutal metal subcategories. I do have a hard time, deciphering which one is which. But I do know Aborted was very influential at the beginning of the movement. But I do feel like their contributions and their legacy was quite overshadowed by the other pioneers of the genre and future pioneers of the genre that further explored it and popularized it and mainstreamed it. But for what they did, I feel like these guys are deserving of a B tier rating. Some may disagree, but when you think of the brutal subcategories as a whole, these guys' relevance just kind of staggers a little beneath the guys that are leading the charge and have for a while. Alright, the next band is absolutely legendary, whether you like it or not. It is Accept. These guys were vastly important for the development of metal in the 80s. They influenced countless artists. They did have a period of uncertainty and just really inactivity in the 90s. And they got a rebirth around 2010 with their new singer, Marc. And it doesn't really matter what happens to the band. These guys are persevering. They're more popular than ever. They are legends, and they are so for a reason. One of Germany's biggest bands and one of metal's most legendary bands, Accept, is S tier. Alright, so this next band is probably going to piss a lot of people off. These guys are extremely relevant, and they're actually getting increasingly more popular in the United States. This is Ailstorm. They're known for a subcategory of metal called pirate metal. That's kind of what they're themed around. That's what they dress up as. But pirate metal is a relative of the folk metal category, and what Ailstorm has done to mainstream and spread their influence, especially into the United States. They've done more than I think anybody else has in the genre. The next one is an undisputed legend, another S tier band for the extreme, brutal, core bands of the 2000s into now. That is all that remains. Their legacy, I think, is enduring. They did lose one of their guitarists, an absolute legend in the guitar community, Ollie Hebert. And it seems like no matter what, these guys just stay at the top of the crowd, and their fans have immortalized them, and that is their legacy, so they should be and deserve an S tier. Amaranth. These guys had a lot of talent with poor execution. They did not really go over but so well in America, and honestly, even today, reviews on this band are mixed with mostly negative reviews that I've seen. And honestly, they're not extremely accessible anymore. They didn't stick around very long. They were popular, you know, about 15 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, but they're no longer relevant today, which is why they get an F. This next is an easy S. I don't really need any introduction or explanation. These guys are Amon Amarth, and they popularized an extreme form of heavy metal and mainstreamed what's called Viking metal. They've got elements of death. They've got elements of black metal. These guys are the real deal, and they just seem to be more popular by the day. These guys have revolutionized metal in a very big way. You cannot ignore them. This next band is really, really, really going to make a lot of people mad. This is probably the most prolific power metal band to come out of Brazil. This is Angra. They have some of the most passionate, wildest fans out there. They do have an incredible legacy with the music they made, but as far as accessibility and their relevance in the United States, that is kind of up in the air. You have folks that do know about them and absolutely love them. It's because of Angra that, you know, Megadeth founder Dave Mustaine picked him out to be his lead guitarist for a while here recently. I mean, this is a legendary band, but I do not feel like they got enough support to become, you know, S tier. I feel like their contributions are respected, but at best, Angra is a C tier metal band. I just don't feel like there was enough love and support, and I feel like they also got overshadowed by the real titans of power metal. But they were different, and they do have an enduring legacy. They are a respected C. At times, I feel like I could put them in the B category. The next is an easy S because of what they've done for modern progressive metal and even invented the subgenre known as gent. And we are talking about Animals as Leaders. Guitarist Tosin Abasi is like a god amongst men. They have done more for metal in the current decade than I feel like a lot of, or really any other metal band has done. They're pioneers, they're trendsetters, they created something that's completely unique, and they are still massively relevant. Alright, this next one is probably going to be unpopular opinion time. This is Anthrax, one of the fabled Big Four thrash bands in America. However, they are the most overlooked of the Big Four. These guys are, in my opinion, they're an incredible band, and to the face of music, their contributions were respected and they are legendary, but they could not match up to the appeal and to the influence of their contemporaries. So I will say Anthrax is an A. Megadeth and Metallica being, you know, the most, I would say, influential out of the Big Four. Slayer was the most extreme. They're popular because they are who they are. And their music and legacy speaks for that. Anthrax is a solid A. They can't be any lower just based upon their cultural significance. These guys are legends. Apocalyptica. We are about to get our first non-metal category entrance. I do not really even know why they're here. I understand they do have some crossover capabilities with metal, but as a whole, these guys are just wildly, wildly different. Arch Enemy. This is going to be an easy S right here. Arch Enemy has been on top of the world for a long, long time now. They have popularized extreme metal, female-fronted extreme metal, and these guys are about as household as ketchup. That is hard to do. They've been relevant for over 20 plus years, and they just seem to be getting more and more popular, even with a different vocalist. Guys, you cannot avoid them. They're everywhere. They're massive. They've done a lot for metal, especially modern metal and today's music. You cannot give Arch Enemy anything other than an S. The next band is a newer band that has changed a lot in a very short amount of time, taking progressive and modern metal to brand new heights. They are taking the metal world by storm, including the guitar playing community. This is Architects. They are absolutely unavoidable, but I'm putting them in A tier simply because they haven't been around or they haven't had notoriety, but for so long. They are changing things. I feel like soon, in the next few years, they can be legends, but right now, they're still building their repertoire. But they've done so in a very big way that's changed a lot, which means they're an A. All right, our first no context band. This is Arcturus. I do not really know much about them. Guys, this is where you got to help me out. Any information that you have to help me define where they place in the context of heavy metal, let me know in the comments. Also, I'm going to urge you guys to be judicious with your rankings. Personal feelings need to be set aside with actual influence. Remember who the giants are and remember their place. That's all I've got to say. I got to really check out this next logo. These logos are killing me. All right, this is Arcona. I've honestly never heard of them before this list. So I'm going to toss them into the no context category because I really can't speak on them. As I Lay Dying was one of the OGs of the core movement in the late 90s, early 2000s. They are still extremely relevant and popular. They did lay down a lot of the foundation of what is modern metal today. Relevance, I'm not exactly sure about, but for what they did at the beginning of the movement, they have to be here. They're still kicking. At the Gates is one of the infamous Gothenburg trio of melodic death metal from Sweden. They kind of invented the buzzsaw sound that Swedish metal is known for. They cannot get anything other than an A. Slaughter of the Soul was an extremely important release to the death metal community. They are still active and still extremely relevant and popular. Easy S. August Burns Red. This is probably going to make a lot of people mad. These guys were extremely popular and at the forefront of the grindcore movement in the early mid-2000s, probably even around 2009 and 10. But I feel like these guys got way overshadowed by the other bands in the genre, and I do not feel like their contributions matched what their contemporaries put down. And also, I do not feel like they're extremely relevant today. But for their contributions to metal, I'm going to put them in the same category as Aborted. So they're an easy B. The next one is a source of conflict for a lot of people. If you're into melodic metal and power metal or European metal, this is Toby Sammet's Avantasia. As you guys know, Tobias Sammet is, because I don't know if Edguy's a thing anymore, the lead singer of the legendary power metal band Edguy. This is probably one of the biggest operations in European heavy metal and in power metal to date. This dude has global influence. His band has global influence. And incredibly influential guest singers and musicians. These tours are massive. Toby Sammet's just, in general, one of the most highly regarded and highly talented musicians out there. But this is where the unpopular opinion comes in. Even though Avantasia is hands down one of the most successful bands in the history of, power metal, he is still living in the shadow. Toby is still living in the shadow of his original band, Edguy, whose legacy exceeds themselves. Toby Sammet cannot really post anything on Facebook without the question, when's the next Edguy album coming out? Whenever you hear that multiple times a day, every day, no matter what you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to pursue, that's how you know your legacy is legendary. I don't really ever think that Toby's really going to get over that because he created something so unique. But I will say, due to their influence and just how big these guys are and what they've done for metal, they're between a B and an A. I can't give them anything less than an A because just how much significance they have culturally. But I will say they are like A-. All right, unpopular opinion time. Avatar, another Swedish metal band that's kind of current and modern. They have really changed a lot of what metal looks like and sounds like, but I do not know if they've established enough influence and legacy to be considered S or even A tier. I want to see what the music trends look like in the next several years, and I do not know if they'll survive that, but I know they have the potential to, which is why they are a B tier band. These guys are unavoidable, they're popular, they're mainstream. I do not know if they have enough pull to be anything more than a B at this time. All right, this one's killing me right here, but I can't deny this. I'm not particularly a fan of this band, but they're undeniable. Their contributions to metal music changed everything, and they continue to. This is Avenged Sevenfold. They're an easy S, an undeniable S. These guys revolutionized the sound of modern metal. They repopularized having guitar solos in metal music, whereas before there was just really no one playing solos in metal anymore. These guys have reintroduced a sense of melody into heavy music. So we do have a lot to owe to them. They are as name brand and household as peanut butter. They're real legends of the genre, especially for a modern band. They've done things that really not a lot of younger bands have done. And they continue to challenge themselves to be the best version of themselves and to put out continuously better music. They work their asses off, and they're setting a really good example for young metal bands. And I don't see a lot of that coming out of anyone else, really. So hands down, Avenged Sevenfold is an S. Like it, love it, or leave it. I would love to leave this, but I can't. Another painful S tier is baby metal. They've revolutionized the freaking world with a new genre called kawaii metal. I don't even get what the buzz is about this band, but they're everywhere. They're unavoidable, and there's a lot of offspring bands from them that were just incredibly influenced by them. They are what they are. They're the biggest of the big. They've revolutionized metal in a way that I truly do not understand. But they are S tier. Alright, and these logos are killing me. I gotta figure out what this one is. I wish Tiermaker had... Oh, that's Bathory. I wish Tiermaker had bigger logos that were easier to read. Now this is what I'm talking about when it comes to legendary bands with only a handful of releases, being relatively unknown. But the contributions of what Bathory did for heavy metal changed everything. These guys were black metal before black metal was cool. They are one of the absolute most legendary Norwegian bands that came out before what was popularized as black metal in the 90s, before Mayhem, before Burzum, before a lot of those other bands. There was Mayhem, and if they didn't exist, that Norwegian wave, that iconic Norwegian wave of black metal would not exist. And people are still discovering them today, even though accessibility is still somewhat of an issue. But people keep rediscovering this band. They are massively influential. They cannot be replaced. All right, so the next band is a band that I actually like. They're a newer band, a power metal band from either Finland or Norway. I can't remember which. They're Battle Beast. They started making waves a few years back. I think they have a couple albums underneath them. They are starting to gain popularity, but for the most part, their relevance, I feel like in the power metal subgenre, is a little low. But I feel like they are slowly becoming mainstream, which is why I'm giving them a C. I do feel like in time, these guys will probably be an easy B or an A. It just really depends on how much support they get and how much influence they have. The next one is a Russian extreme metal band, Batushka. I don't really know anything about them, so I can't speak on them. So they're in the no context, guys. You know what to do. The next band is an absolute S tier. Cannot even be argued. This is Poland's Behemoth. Extreme metal, black metal. These guys got banned in, I think, a country or two, which makes them even more popular. You cannot deny their presence. They are mainstream for, really extreme form of metal. And you got to hand it to them. They've revolutionized the face of music in extreme metal. They cannot be replaced. And same can be said for this next band with the core movement, mathcore, grindcore, all the core. This is Between the Buried and Me. You cannot escape them. You don't stop hearing about them. They are true innovators of the modern extreme metal genres. They've earned their place. They've maintained that place for a long time, and these are one of the bands that you cannot overshadow. No introduction needed, no explanation needed. Another S-tier band is Black Sabbath. I don't care what period you like from them. If they didn't exist, this list wouldn't exist, hands down. This is actually a surprising S-tier band. I know they're important to the power metal subgenre, but I just didn't realize until recently just how much pull and how much influence they have in America and how relevant they still are. And that is Blind Guardian, one of the OGs of the German power metal movement. They are unique to anyone else, and they've done things within the power metal subgenre that no one else has done. They're absolute legends. I do not, again, these logos need to become more legible. That is Bloodbath. I have heard of them. I do not know much about them, and I don't have enough context to place them on this list, so they are going straight into no context for you guys to figure that out for me. Brand of Sacrifice. I'm sacrificing them to no context because I just don't know anything about them. Bring Me the Horizon, they're in the same category as Between the Buried and Me. Their contributions changed the face of metal forever. Like it, love it, leave it. I'd rather leave it, but I cannot deny it. The next one is going to be quite an unpopular opinion, and that is Bullet for My Valentine. They are like emo, core, metal, sort of, yeah, I don't care for it. But they were very, very popular. They were influential for what seemed to be a very short period of time. They disbanded, I don't know exactly why. And I really honestly didn't hear a lot of their fans, which were almost everyone at the time, ask for their comeback, at least not apparently. They are back, and the reception is generally warm. They seem to be doing okay. But for the most part, they're only remembered for one song, which is Tears Don't Fall. I feel like their legacy is minimal, which puts them at a C. I would not put them at a D rank because of what they contributed at the time and how they did things. They were very different, but I don't think these guys are deserving of anything higher than a C. All right, back to black metal in Norway, one of the most notorious bands at the time, and one of the most legendary bands is Bursum. You have Varg Vikernes. Again, no explanation needed. These guys are so noteworthy and important that Netflix made a documentary about them and Mayhem called Lords of Chaos. People continually find this band and are influenced by them. Bursum belongs where they are. They did the whole church burning thing. Not saying I'm for that sort of thing. I'm just saying no one did what they did. And they belong where they're at because their legacy and Varg's legacy is still ever present and relevant. Candlemass, when you're talking about doom metal, this is pretty much the OG. Probably one of the biggest doom metal band of all time, hailing from Sweden. These guys are absolute titans of the genre. You really can't get much better or bigger than Candlemass. They changed heavy metal in a very big yet underground way. And when you pull up anything on doom metal, this is one of the very first names that come up, and for good reason. I don't really need to explain this one. Cannibal Corpse, you guys know. If you know, you know, and you know this is right. Carcass, also S tier. They redefined and reinvented death metal in a way that was influential to everyone. The Heartwork album was one of the absolute most influential metal records of the death metal tier. They also helped inspire other bands to create these subgenres like deathcore, technical death, mellow death. That all started with Carcass. Carnifex. You used to hear about this band, or at least I used to hear about this band a lot. I believe they're what's called pagan/gothic metal. I really don't have enough context to place their influence on this list. It's hot and cold with them. I don't really have a say of a really good say of where they belong. So this is for you guys to help me out. I know they're on here somewhere. I just don't know where to place them. I do know where to place these guys. Cattle decapitation. As far as grind and brutal metal is concerned, these guys are one of the unavoidable legends. They redefine the genre. You can't not know about them. Another legend of of heavy metal in general is Norway's Celtic Frost. With little or no availability, these guys just seem to be one of the most influential bands of all time. They continue to influence people to this day. What they did for heavy metal and extreme forms of metal, I mean, is just, it doesn't need to be said. They've earned their spot. Chelsea Grin. We're talking about grindcore here. This is one of the major bands in the grindcore, modern brutalcore stuff. When it comes to competing with these guys, I feel like they're between an S and an A because I don't know if their relevance is still huge. So I feel like their contributions were noted and they're, you know, incredibly well known in that circle, but I don't feel like I can give them any more than an A. Children Bodom is easy S, no explanation needed. Their legacy exceeds themselves. And the band is immortalized and has been for a long time in the eyes of their fans. Cinderella. Absolutely not metal, but I absolutely love them. They're one of my favorite bands. Cradle of Filth. Unpopular opinion time. Actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, Chelsea Grin does deserve an S because they're one of the 4 bands that helped invent grindcore. Alright, it's unpopular opinion time. The next band to get an S on this list is none other than Cradle of Filth. These guys are pretty much unarguably the most successful and the most popular mainstream black metal band that has ever existed. They took black metal in a direction that no one else did it in. They popularized it and somehow made it mainstream. I do believe these guys got banned, I don't remember where, but that, again, adds to your notoriety. You can't avoid them. They did so much for the genre that's black metal and symphonic metal and extreme metal. These guys have influenced countless people. They've earned their spot, and they're still insanely relevant. Crimfall. A Crim fell straight into no context. This is where you guys are going to have to help me. Dark Fortress. Yeah. Straight into no context because before this list, I've never even heard of them. Dark Funeral. These guys are extremely influential in the extreme, either black metal or gothic metal subcategories. I think they are a Swedish band, extremely influential, but when it comes down to it, I don't think they matched the notoriety and popularity and legacy of some of the other guys in the genre, but they are a solid A because they did help form the movement. Death Heaven is a band that we've heard about here recently coming into popularity. They are too new for me to put them anywhere other than a C because when the trends change, I'm not so sure if these guys are going to make it. They're currently popular, and it seems like they're gaining traction here. The only time is going to tell for them. Our next S band does not need any introduction or any explanation. That is Death. They're immortalized. Chuck Schuldiner impact on metal is irrevocable. They coined the term death metal, and they are oftentimes referred to as the greatest death metal band in existence. These guys changed heavy metal forever. Icons, legends, always. Decapitated. They are influential, and I forget which movement they belong to, but they are in the no context. I need you guys to help me out on this one. Def Leppard is not metal, but I do love them. Deftones, without a doubt, these guys are an easy S, even though I can't stand them. Nothing really needs to be said about their contributions to heavy metal and what they've done for modern music. It's hard to put a finger on these guys because you can't talk down what they've done. Absolute legends, whether you like it or not. And also absolute legends of the genre of death metal is America's Deicide. I don't think necessarily they are an S tier band due to lack of consistency within the band. I do believe they've released a lot of things that were seminal and highly influential to death metal, which makes them an A tier band. This is a current band that I know really nothing about. This is Diablo Swing Orchestra. Straight into no context. You guys need to help me out with this one. Diamond Head. Now this is going to make a lot of people mad. If it wasn't for Metallica popularizing and bringing these guys into the mainstream, they deserve an easy F because of how quickly and how violently they flew under the radar. But because of Metallica, people are rediscovering them and have been for decades. I feel like now they are more popular than they've ever been. But as far as their body of work and their contributions to NWO, BHM, New Wave of British Heavy Metal, they really are the lower of the tier, which puts them at a D. They do have good legacy. They did help form what was thrash in America. But when it comes to the other titans of the genre and the impact on music as a whole, they don't chart up. Our first D is Diamond Head. I don't really need to explain this one. And that's Disturbed. They're an easy S. Like it, love it, leave it. They help define the new metal genre, late 90s, early 2000s. There's not a lot of bands that did more than them at the beginning of that wave. And if it wasn't for them, a lot of what was new metal and influential today would not have existed. Take it or leave it. Alright, this hurts me because I do love this band. Dokken was an incredibly popular band back in the 80s. They were different from a lot of hair metal because they included a lot of heavier influences. But there's been massive inconsistencies in this band. I feel like they have a good legacy, but I feel like they are on the verge of losing their legacy because Dokken is still continuing with a diminishing voice, which I feel like he still sounds good, but I feel like a lot of longtime fans are being turned off by this, and for the fact that a reunion with George Lynch and Jeff Pilson still isn't happening, and guys, I don't think it's ever going to. I think that has run its course, and because the band is what it is, and they are the way they are today, be it fair or not, these guys are a solid D. And where did I put Dokken? Oh, there they are. I hate to say this because I feel like they deserve better than that, but the facts are the facts. The next band is a very underground sort of band. I think they're industrial, and that's dope. You hear about them in very small circles. The only reason why people are talking about them today is the Static X conspiracy saying that Edsel Dope is Zero, who is the new frontman of the band, very reminiscent of Wayne Static. If it wasn't so much for that whole Static X legacy sort of thing that's going on right now, no one would care about Dope. So they are a straight F tier band. They're more known now for what's happening with a particular member of the band than they are actually for their contributions. Next F tier is probably going to make some people mad, and it's Dragon Force. These guys were insanely popular and revolutionary, 2006, 2008, possibly 2009. After that, their popularity faded, and honestly, they really just didn't change a whole lot. Yes, their guitar players are virtuosic. Yes, they put Nintendo sounds into a very marketable form of power metal, but their legacy is not enduring. Yes, they're still relevant, but they aren't who and what they were. Their contributions really didn't change much, which is why they're an F. Dream Theater. I might lose some subscribers over this, but you know what? If it wasn't for Dream Theater pioneering, creating that progressive metal genre, taking what Rush created and taking it to the next level, you wouldn't have anything that's gent or progressive, modern progressive, if it wasn't for Dream Theater. If you like that form of music, you need to know where it came from, and that's why Dream Theater is an A. They created the genre. So many other people have reinvented. It all started with them. Alright, inspect. These logos. Oh my god, that is Dying Fetus. Yeah, they're huge. As far as the extreme metal bands, they are huge, but I feel like they do pale in comparison to a lot of their contemporaries and bands that came afterward. But because they did give us so much for the beginning of that genre, and they were innovative, they do belong in the A tier category. Electric Wizard. I do not like the inconsistency in this band. This is an English doom band that's kind of becoming more popular now. They didn't have many records. They didn't have much influence, and honestly not a lot of availability, but they are starting to become more popular because there is a sudden resurgence in doom metal, and sludge, stoner metal is becoming more popular. So you're hearing about them again. People are rediscovering them, but I don't feel like they have a consistently enduring legacy, which puts them at a D tier. When it comes to folk metal from Finland, and for the folk metal genre in general, not many people have done what Alluviati or Alluviati, I don't know how you say it. These guys are irreplaceable. They're mainstream. They are really one of the most influential bands to come out of Finland. And they did change the way metal was, heard. These guys started a whole revolution. As did Emperor, one of the most notorious, most influential black metal bands to come out of Norway in the 90s. Emperor just belongs here because of what they did for the genre. So many people look up to them and have. A lot of people are still being influenced by Isan's original band today. These guys deserve an S. You cannot take them down. Ensiferum. These guys are fairly, popular and fairly well respected and renowned in, oh Lord, I want to say they're either doom or death. No, they're folk metal. Okay, I'm sorry guys. I'm confusing my bands. Ensiferum is another Finnish folk metal band. Very influential. You used to hear about them more. But when it comes to metal from Finland and folk metal in general, I don't feel like they stacked up to their competitors and also their contemporaries. Ensiferum is well known, but they did not get the traction to bring them into S tier or even into A tier in my opinion. These guys belong at a solid B. They're B tier because, honestly, lack of availability and influence. This next one is going to make a lot of people mad. This is an absolutely incredibly popular band. They're amazing. I like them too. This is Epica for female-fronted melodic / power metal. These guys are huge. I do respect them, but they are ultimately an A because, let me tell you why. They wouldn't exist and be where they are if Nightwish hadn't have come first and paved the way for that female-fronted melodic metal movement. Then you have Within Temptation, then ultimately Epica. Epica is a legendary band, but they did not revolutionize that genre. They are just one of the best in the genre, which is why they're an A. Equilibrium. I have no idea of anything about them. You guys got to help me out with this. No context. Evanescence. I do not know. I do not know why they're here. They're not metal. They do have metal elements. They're a very inclusive sounding band, which is amazing. I'm not saying they're a bad band, but they did more for modern hard rock than they ever did for metal. They're really not spoken much in the... and they're really not talked about a whole lot in the heavy metal context. But for what they did for rock and roll, mainstream hard rock, they're irreplaceable. But they ultimately do not belong on this list. Evil. Brutal death metal. They're kind of underground though. They are popular. I do not know if their influence is enough to really compete with the titans of the genre. But for what they have done and their amount of influence, they belong in the D tier category because they are an influential band. Alright, it is unpopular opinion time again. Another legendary Bay Area thrash band is Exodus. They were pre-Metallica, pre-Big Four. Kirk Hammett played guitar in Exodus before he went to Metallica. These guys never really did stack up to the big four. They got overwhelmed. They did release some very seminal records in the thrash metal community, but their contributions as a whole just didn't stack up. However, they do have an incredible legacy and an incredible fan base, and I think they're more popular now than they were in the 80s, landing them a solid C tier. Fantomas is a supergroup made of Mike Patton and a couple other guys. These guys are as underground as grubworms. I mean, they really don't have any influence. This band didn't really go anywhere. Fate's Warning. This is going to be a sensitive subject. Progressive metal from the 80s, incredible musicians, a decent legacy, but they just didn't get the attention they deserved. So they're not always extremely accessible. Those that love them will swear by them, but those numbers are few in comparison to the other titans of the genre, landing them a D tier rating. But they are incredibly legendary. Fear Factory, you know where this is going. S tier, industrial metal. There's not a band that's done more for extreme and industrial music in the 90s than Fear Factory. They are a name brand and as common as peanut butter in a household. You cannot knock them down. They really helped create the genre as we know it. Thin Troll. This is a highly influential death/folk band from, again, Finland. But when it comes to metal from Finland, especially folk metal, I gotta say these are kind of on the back burner with Ensiferum. They're about the same level as far as influence and availability. They just didn't quite get there like the other bands did. Firehouse is not metal, they're hard rock, they're from the 80s. I do like quite a few of their songs, but they don't belong here. Alright, Five Finger Death Punch. This hurts, because I don't like them. But I cannot deny their running legacy right now, their popularity, how they mainstreamed metal again in a completely different way. This is a very controversial band, but as you know, controversy adds to their renown. These guys are taking over the world, whether we like it or not, whether they sound good or not. My opinions aside, do I feel like they've done enough do I feel like they've contributed enough to be S tier? No, and they also have not been around long enough, in my opinion, to do so. But they are a solid A tier, but I do expect this band in the next 10 years to be an S tier band, just because of what they're doing for metal. You cannot disrespect that. I know this logo, but I don't know anything really about the band. So I'm going to have to go no context. I hear that they're legendary. I don't know how far their influence runs, or really how relevant they are. So I can't judge these guys, so they're going into no context. Same with Funeral. I know they're a doom band, but I don't know enough about them, and honestly, I do not feel like they're extremely available. Alright, so this next band, it might be a sore subject for some, but I feel like general consensus of metal listeners, especially power metal listeners, will understand this. I'm having some conflict with this. This is Gamma Ray. This is Kai Hansen's post-Halloween band. As a whole, their contributions were respected, but they never really changed things for metal like Halloween did. Again, this is another artist living in his own shadow while he was in this band. However, they did have some seminal releases like Land of the Free that did keep it alive and did things differently. Kai Hansen's a very important figure in metal, but this band ultimately did not achieve, massive relevance or influence, honestly. And now that Kai Hansen is back in Halloween, you're not seeing really any of those Gamma Ray fans asking for a reunion. Honestly, this band has been dead for a little while, ultimately giving them an F tier. If this band was more important, it wouldn't have mattered if Kai Hansen had left Gamma Ray to go back to Halloween. People would still be wanting it. I'm not really seeing anybody wanting it because what the fans really wanted was him to go back to Halloween, and they got it. The next band is going to make a lot of people mad, might lose some subscribers, but I don't really care. This is Ghost. Whether you like it or not, they're an S-tier metal band. They may not be brutal, they may not be slammed, they may not even be extremely heavy at times, but they are metal. Their music is based in metal. They're a metal band that covers a lot of ground in a revolutionary way that not a lot of people do. A lot of people hate them due to their image and their sound, but that's what makes them legendary. They came on scene almost with no warning. They took over the world. There's so much mythos around the band and their story. There's so much intrigue. And honestly, the legacy they built in such a short amount of time, along with their popularity, they have changed metal. And honestly, they've changed metal for the better. If you disagree, think about your history here. Kiss isn't metal, but they did revolutionize everything about hard rock in the 70s. They influenced generations of people, and Ghost is doing the same thing. Think about it. They're about as household as Coca-Cola. Same thing Kiss did. People hated Kiss for that. People are hating Ghost for it. It's the same thing in another decade. S tier. Glory Hammer. I believe this is American power metal, but these guys on the chain are down at the bottom, to be completely honest with you. America's not really kind to power metal in general, and these guys are about as niche as it gets, in my opinion, landing them an F tier. Godflesh is an industrial metal band, and I do not know much about them or their influence. They're going straight into no context. Godsmack. They're not metal, but they did revolutionize what was modern hard rock and groove in the 90s. Gojira. Goes without saying. French extreme progressive metal band. Changed the world almost overnight and are continuing to. These guys are legendary without even having to try. Immensely popular in the US and overseas. You really can't ask for that. And they're extremely accessible. These guys are what we call modern legends. Gorgoroth. When it comes to the OG black metal, Gorgoroth is one of them. They're one of those unavoidable names, but they did not reach, in my opinion, the level of notoriety or influence or even the availability of the other titans of the genre. But because they were one of the guys that pioneered it and created the genre, they are deserving of an A tier. Alright, I'm not really sure what that is. Another obscure logo. Grafvenir? Yeah, I've never even heard of these guys. I hope you guys have so I can understand them. Now, this is an old band, old German band, Haggard. But I've never actually heard of them until this list. You guys might want to give me some context on that. Hematom. Industrial metal from Germany, and generally from what I'm hearing from people, they're not very well received, but I also do not know their legacy. So I'm going to have to go no context for this because I do not feel like they're available in my circle of the world. Now, this is one of my absolute all-time favorite bands and one of my biggest influences. This is Hammerfall, legendary power metal out of Sweden, one of the biggest power metal bands to ever exist. However, in recent times, it looks like they are starting to lose their, become less relevant in America. They're still popular as ever overseas, but since I'm starting to see a decline in their fan base here, I have to give them an A. They're one of the best power metal bands out there. Did they do the same kind of, revolutionary things as Halloween or Blind Guardian? No, but they're almost on that tier, which is why they're an A. And speaking of Halloween, Easy S, no explanations needed. They just belong there. Relatively newer band, Ice Nine Kills, extreme metal, somewhat commercial, but ultimately I feel like they're not as influential or revolutionary as anyone else in the genre. They're popular, but their popularity wanes. So I do not know if they have legacy or staying power. That's why they're an F tier. Alright, so this next one is Immolation. I've heard of them, but I don't know anything about them. I have absolutely no context. So they're going in the no context bracket. I hope someone informs me about this because I know they are important to a degree. Speaking of important, there's fewer black metal bands that are more important than Immortal. No other explanation needed. Imperial Triumphant, I have no idea what they are. Never heard of them before this list. You guys might want to help me out with that. But when it comes to bands like At the Gates and the Gothenburg trio of melodic and extreme death metal, you do not get any better or more relevant or influential than In Flames. They're right up there with At the Gates and maybe even a bigger band than At the Gates. Sweden really knows what they're doing when it comes to death metal. And this is no exception. Infant Annihilator, brutal metal. They were one of the OGs, I do believe, of the genre. Relevance nowadays, I do not know if it's extremely high. You don't hear about them as much as you used to. Their contributions are respected, but they are becoming extremely niche, which is why I'm putting them at B. And another easy S, no explanation needed. It's freaking Iron Maiden. No explanation needed. Iron Savior. I do believe that is a German power metal band. I've listened to them. And honestly, in the context of the power metal genre and metal as a whole, they did kind of fly under the radar. They just didn't stack up like a lot of the other bands did. Now this next band is honestly fairly influential, been around for a little while, and they are taking the world by storm. You hear about them all the time. Female-fronted extreme metal band Ginger. They belong in a solid B tier because they're rising to fame and they're rising to power. And I feel like in the next few years, they're probably going to be an A tier band. And what they're doing for female-fronted extreme metal is just absolutely amazing. These guys will be an A in no time. And if you put them in A tier, I probably wouldn't be mad either. But for my purposes, just in what I've been researching and paying attention to, I would say they're at the very top of the B tier, B++. Speaking of legendary bands for the extreme core, brutal subgenres of metal, there's fewer bands that have done more for the genre than Job for a Cowboy. Absolute legends. Like It, Love It, Leave It. They changed pretty much everything. Speaking of bands that changed everything, Judas Priest. Like It, Love It, Leave It. You cannot deny them. They are the metal gods for a reason. Camelot. Oh, American power metal and how temperamental it is. These guys are probably, without a doubt, the absolute most popular American heavy metal band. However, I do feel like their relevance is limited. They're popular in certain circles. Their contributions really were good and very well respected in the power metal community. But honestly, legacy, contributions, the reception and availability of their music honestly lands them at a D tier at best, C tier. But again, relevance is huge. And in the grand scheme of things, I just don't think they had it. It came and it went. But overall, I would put them at the top of the D tier as like a D+. D++. And as far as technical core and brutal metal, doesn't matter who's singing for this band, honestly. Unavoidable legends of the brutal core subgenres of heavy metal is Killswitch Engage. You cannot deny them. They've been on top of the world for a couple decades. No one can match the kind of effort and pioneering they put into this whole thing. I don't particularly like that genre of music. I don't particularly like that band, but you cannot deny that they're a globally relevant band. Alright guys and girls, and that is it for part 1 of my Tiermaker Ultimate Heavy Metal Bands List Challenge. There's going to be a few more videos in this collection simply because of how extensive this list is. And if you guys know anything about any of those no context bands and where they rank factually in the world of heavy metal, please let me know. And at the end, I will update all these bands on where they actually belong on the metal chart according to fact. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you guys next time.